Thank you very much to Anal and Rian and Dion and Adrian van Wyk as well for asking me to perform this evening. This is such an amazing venue. I've never been to InZync before, so it's a real privilege to be here. I think it's quite appropriate, just having listened to Brendan do his thing, that I'm going to start with a poem called Another Soul's Art. And I think all of us who lives a creative life in some form, and that doesn't mean that you have to be a creative artist, know what it's like to have art do something to you and speak to you, and really climb inside you and change you in a way. And this is what this poem is about. Another Soul's Art. She sips silent music, another soul alive in nocturnal notes. A hand runs aimlessly along keys, grasps for a little more, a new pang of pain, an answer, more tears to wash old ones away. She sips silent music, walks down hairs on her neck, bends each strand till her spine awakens. A learning licks her skin, stretched thin. A yearning yields from plucked strings, sighing under servants' fingers, making them ache for love. She sips silent music without talking words. She hears her soul's silent stride inside the blue oblivion and black light. A hand hankers, rattles, pushes pain up, jostles joy up, world's worm ripple through her flesh raised in goosebumps. Sometimes we close mouths, sometimes we speak. Now her tongue thick, long, swollen with words, falls from between teeth. She sips silent music. A cobalt quaver cascades from acoustic strings. Weathered leathered hands lift her from ebony ivory keys. A smiling solemn sound found shining life. An other soul alive in nocturnal notes. She sips silent music, silent music. She sips silent music. Thank you. Okay, it's really cold in your side of the world. I'm going to take it a bit slow because I don't know how long the throat's going to hold up. Okay, the next poem is called Imagine. And I think I'll just let the words speak for themselves. Imagine us two silent souls, sighing as we slink between dreams and waking, mesmerized each by the other's banal beauty. A haunting hand, your neck, two breasts and feet, deftly dissolve into cobweb of stars, melt into thought as our minds meet in intrinsic intuition. Let's decorate silken skies with our fears to paint midnight sky of molasses. Ease into euphoria. Street our fingers across clouds to pull patience, pinch passion, tear through tears as we imagine Thank you. The next poem that I'm going to do is called Letting Go in Autumn. I think over the last few years, one of the things in my own life that I've really become more aware of is what are the things that I'm holding on to which tend to actually hold me back? And how do I deal with the fear of letting go? Does that mean holding on and waiting for something better to come along? But the more I kind of think about it and the more I live, the more I realize that as long as I hold on, something else can't come along. It's like you need to create space before something new can come into your life. So this poem is called Letting Go in Autumn. And yeah, I wrote it while I was living overseas. And one of the things that my business partner and friend Nicole LaRue recently said to me was that there's no autumn like an American New England autumn on the East Coast. And I thought about what she said, and I was like, oh, well, you know, the trees here do turn, you know. She's like, no, but it's not the same. And I thought about what she said, and it's right. And I think, I mean, I've never experienced a Boston autumn, but I've experienced a London autumn. And it's slightly more kind of autumn than it is in South Africa, but I'm sure it's nothing like that intense orange and red and brown. But there's something about the seasons changing, and there's something about noticing those things that does something to us as well, whether we are aware of it or not. So this is Letting Go in Autumn. I will no longer wait for you to return, my love. You and your quiet stealing of breath by moonlight, your feeble stealing of day by lying will not be carried into the new season. The autumn arrives, and with its arrival demands a new leaf. Green gives way to brown, orange, yellow, red brittle leaves, aching to fall off their trees. Their time to die is now. They understand this, but we do not. We stand in dying's way, silently scream as it pulls what it needs from us, the ever-receding light of truth, and leaves in its place the dull grayness of only existing, because we could not let go. We held on to yesterday's joy, held on in fear we would never find joy again, in fear we would find a new laugh to paint our faces the color of summer, to shade us the rhythm of rain on rooftops. We don't know what music sounds like anymore. We have forgotten its tone and pitch. Now our walk sings somber songs of loss, longing, and wistful waiting. The hunger has returned, perpetual hunger never to be fulfilled. There is no thirst. Yeah, that too we have forgotten. I will no longer wait for you to return, my love. The autumn is here, and like those brittle leaves, I ache to let go. Thank you. Living overseas in the UK, I had a friend, and he was, at the time he was running his own business, and he was in his early 20s, and he was quite kind of young and successful, and had studied at one of the good universities in America. And at the time, he was really struggling with the company that he'd started, and he was thinking about going to do his master's in business, and he really wasn't sure, and he kind of wasn't, you know, sure how to deal with failure, or what he perceived to be failure. And he emailed me one day in reply. I just emailed and said, "How are you?" And he replied and he said, "It is the uncertainty." And I thought about that, and I took that line and I wrote him a poem. And so this poem is called For Imad. It is the uncertainty, he said. It is the autumn, she thinks. It is the uncertainty, he said. It is the autumn, she thinks. Green leaves turn brittle brown through shades of ochre orange, and fear. 4 o'clock darkness pulls mist of unspoken words from mute mouths, and hearts rattle inside seemingly empty bodies, rattling inside seemingly bursting train carriages, empty of happiness and hope. It is the uncertainty, he said. It is the autumn, she thinks. Green leaves turn brittle brown through shades of ochre, orange, and fear. River's wind rustles the forgotten within, and a heart rattles inside your sunken skeleton. Your sculptured silhouette breaks free. Its nude screams pierce the makeshift masterpieces that turned your purple music banal. And as these voices fall to silence, their sound turns to ash, a waste of passion, black like onyx that now lines your insides. The absurd makes you wild. It is the autumn, she thinks. Come walk with me through this cold November grey along the south bank of our lives, and let the dusk mist settle on the winter of our unknowing souls. It is the uncertainty, he said. I know, she smiles. I know. Okay, I'm gonna do a not so new one, so I'm gonna read, a fairly new one, so I'm gonna read this one. And I guess this poem is called Story of She, and it's written in 3 parts. And again, I'll let the words speak for themselves. Story of She. 1. She dances in dark corners, head bowed low to hide her tears, to shelter her heart hanging in tatters. She dances at night. Light burns her skin, to remove shadow, to shake off dead dreams. He lurks in the shadow. From a distance his eyes follow the contours of her soul, for he sees not her flesh, just her light, and smiles as it grows, and smiles as it grows. 2. He plucks at her heartstrings. Nimble fingers tweak her sadness in B-flat. Find a tear in F-sharp, and she sits, listens, silenced, as he pulls her thoughts out one by one and lines them up for her to hear till tears fall from her like lonely piano sounds echoing in an empty room. 3. She moves in music. Notes and rests line her inside. Play of rhythm of her breath, she casts light. Her flat feet imprint dry cement. Her breath paints words in dry air, and at night she casts shadows, then ties moon to her wrist with long fine thread, and wears it like a balloon to light her way. Thank you. The next poem that I'm going to do is called Phoenix. In May of last year, Agenda Feminist Media commissioned me to write a poem for a radio documentary that they were doing about the girl child. And they asked that the poem honor what women before had done in the fight for feminism and just for equal rights, but also as a way to really inspire everybody, male and female, from all walks of life to get involved. And so this poem is called Phoenix. She licks the ash from her fingers and the lies from her lips, unwraps the dance of deceit from her hips. In night's molasses hour, her hands find her feet as one last time she violently weeps. Lift your eyes to her seared skin. Let your tired fingers trace scars etched by love's ink. Barren throat whose voice was lost to shattering silence. Empty chest smooth with smothering her own needs. Brittle breast dry from feeding world's greed. Taut thighs tired with every march, protest, birth, and carbs whose veins tell truth of every brawl, silence, ache. She thirsts as her heart weeps for molten light. So she licks the ash from her fingers and the lies from her lips, unwraps the dance of deceit from her hips. Now her flesh yields to flame as she sings silent your names, to burn world into waking. Her cry rings out to give the dawn its cobalt light, cracked charcoal sky open in molasses hour of night. Fire falls from her like liquid to banish defeat. Feathered flames burst from her back, lift her feet, and she rises to Okusan. No Icarus is she, but a simple spell of amber, drunk with strength and heat. She rises to raise your iron veils, and in the stillness of her soaring, her wings whisper wind to bring you taste of open thought, and raise your eyes till in her pupils you see reflected your own silent, singeing soul. Okay, the next poem is called Innocent Wisdom. It's actually, the first poem that I ever performed on a stage about 9 years ago at a little place called the Independent Armchair Theatre in Obs. And I wrote it because growing up, I think as a child and even as a teenager, I often felt extremely frustrated at how patronizing adults were and how they didn't seem to understand that what people, that at the time what I wanted and needed was to be heard and to be listened to. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about working with kind of teenagers and young adults, people who are my age. And it really is about how children have wisdom that we often ignore because we're trying to instill our own values in them, rather than listening and seeing what it is that they're trying to teach us. So this is Innocent Wisdom. Naive child, cradled in an old soul tinged with pain unmet, daydreams through indigo eyes. Breath the mad reason, she often dances at dusk to crush criticism and constant cynicism with her song of why. Poisoned by perverted perceptions of truth, eyes assume the color of confusion. Languished by labels, her sanity curdles. Under a muse of secret stars, she smooths suffering away with free thought, and a heart is enraptured by enigmatic emotions streaming through and from and to her being, streaming through and from and to her being, invincible. Deafening calls of Pluto fade like a feather, and only the sound of imagination is heard. Please let me be. Thank you. Okay, the next one is called Like Listening to Sex, and I haven't done it in a while, so I might actually just get my words. A friend, I used to organize gigs with an independent record label called Dala Flat Music, and we used to do kind of music and poetry and kind of improvise and do them together. And a friend of mine, Chantal, who owned the record label, she came to me once and said that one of the other poets had said to her that when listening to my voice, he felt like it was like listening to sex. And I kind of thought, okay, that's an interesting way to describe it. And it was half and it kind of felt like a bit of an insult. I wasn't sure how to take it, and to turn it on its head, I decided to write a poem about it. So this is like listening to sex. They say her voice is like listening to sex. Lost in a pen, guided by ink, she gives birth to sex of innocence. Unbound passion, undiscovered truth, irreverent questions that suckle on words her brain refuses to cling to. Born in deep sigh between anticipation and orgasm, she waits to hear sigh of ecstasy. They say her voice is like listening to sex. Yet, too often she is trying to decipher physical meshing and mangling of two desperate beings, aching, yearning to be fulfilled by the other. Her voice slowly slides into those hollows that leave us unknowingly empty. Find sweet sex of your soul before you clamber to claim another's. Thank you. This poem is called I Painted in the Condensation, and I'll just do the poem. I painted in the condensation on your window to find only the rain on the other side. And there I whispered love under my breath, for fear you would hear it and run away. I painted in the condensation on your window to find only the grey on the other side. My unsteady fingers drew wishes in dots to spit out the words I could never say. I painted in the condensation on your window to find the rain still falling on the other side. And as it fell, I whispered goodbye under your words, for fear you would hear it and have me stay. I painted in the condensation on your window to find only the moon on the other side. Now my dreams carve out a light in the darkness as the autumn steals light from the day. Thank you. An Afrikaans poem. Even though I speak English and Afrikaans at home, I never kind of felt comfortable enough to write in Afrikaans, especially not like in kind of Kaap's Afrikaans. But when I was living overseas, I really found myself missing the mountain. Having grown up like in Cape Town, I didn't realize how much it rooted me until I didn't have it. And I think anybody who's kind of lived and experienced that knows what I mean. And so I found myself being pulled to write a poem in Afrikaans, and the poem is called Ma Ek Wou Huis Toe. And it was recently featured on the Buddy Leisha Radio Poetry Podcast. And so this is the poem. Ma Ek wou huis toe. Daai berg wat blou oor ons stad lê roep my. In die donker ure van die nag, sy stem praat my ore sag. En die lied van die suidooswind maak lawaai in my lewe mag. Ma Ek wou huis toe. My hart is vol van verlange, en die trane wat soos klippe om my wange loop, lê hard en swaar op my bors en maak die asemhaal moeilik. Ek mis die see en die reuk van sout wat voor ons voordeur lê, op 'n someroggend geswel met die hitte. Ek mis die tonge en taal van my mense en hulle stemme wat plat oor die woorde val. Die val onder my voete is afgeskeur, die ander lande se paaie en ander mense se pyn deurloop. Die bloed in my are klop aan 'n ritme, want ek in hierdie groen land die vind die. Maar ek ga huis toe. Daai berg wat blou oor ons stad lê op my. In die donker ure van die nag, sy stem praat my ore sag. En die lied van die suidooswind maak lawaai in my leemag. Maar ek ga huis toe. Die grote wêreld se tyd is verby. En ek wil weer eens lê langs jou sy. Thank you.